Hello and welcome to the video. I'm up here in this little window. This is Simeon. Say hello, Simeon.
Hello, everyone.
Simeon is a friend of mine and somebody that works on the ELRS project. In fact, I need to say before we go any further, a massive thank you to this gentleman, because when I had the problems in the very early days when I started playing with the ELRS stuff, specifically with the very first versions of the Beta FPV micro modules, this chap very generously gave up. It was about 2 hours, I think, that we were chatting.
Something about like that.
Something like that, yeah, where we literally tried everything to try and get this stuff sorted out. And without his help, the first videos that I had done on the project wouldn't have made it. ELRS itself, for those of you that haven't seen, go and check my video that talks about what is Express LRS or ELRS. Talks about what it is. It's a new protocol that is not owned by any manufacturer. So it means that it is an independent protocol. And the cool thing is that you can buy receivers from one manufacturer, radio modules from another. Models are starting to come out now with the ELRS receivers built in. It means that we don't have to be locked into a manufacturer's protocol. It's very clever because it has telemetry involved, but it is developing very quickly. When we spoke, must have been about 3 months ago, was it? When we had
something like that.
Yeah, it was only about 3 months ago. It was version 1.0 is the very first version. And as of when we are recording this evening, version 2.0 is in beta. So we've already gone through quite a few versions of 1.x and we're about to go to 2.0. So I thought this is a great opportunity to pick this gentleman's brains about what some of the new stuff is that's coming into ELRS version 2.0, because this is a very dynamic project where lots of things have changed. And also, you as my viewers have asked some really interesting questions about things like certification and also things like the hardware and software integration. So we're going to cover that after we go through the main pieces as well. The first part of this, now I'll put time codes down below, so if you're looking for a particular thing you can find it, because I'm not sure how this is going to last. We're aiming for 15-20 minutes, but who knows. What we'll do is we'll go through first of all the kind of the key things that's coming in both 2.0, and I think you kind of mentioned that you're also willing to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you guys are working on for 2.1.
Yep, the 2.1 features are still a work in progress, and we're still deciding on when to finally get them into the mainline code, but stay tuned for those.
Yes, caveat, caveat, caveat. Anything talking about futures is subject to change. So this is more of an update. And for those of you that are interested in ELRS to kind of get an idea what's going on. Just a word, if you want to know a little bit more about the project, there are a couple of places that you can go. There's the official website. Again, I'll put the URL down in the video description so you can go and have a look in there. Lots of good information. But also you can go and visit the GitHub pages. I have a video that talks about how to read GitHub. It's designed for the developers, but as pilots and users of the system, it's incredibly useful to keep an eye on what's going on there, and to kind of, it's also a great place if you find a bug or a feature or maybe have an idea about something that could be improved in the system. GitHub's a great place to kind of let the developers know it's something that you're interested in, or somebody else may have proposed it and you can kind of say, actually, you know what, this is a really good idea. I've had lots of things in projects like iNav, for example, added in doing just that. So let's, without any further ado, get into the list. So where do you want to start? Dynamic power and fan control?
So for the dynamic power and fan control was one of the features mostly asked by crossfire pilots and people that are doing long range or need a better penetration for their systems. And the idea is that the dynamic power is set to a certain value. So let's say that you're flying behind a building and your RSSI dBm and your LQ drop to low warning levels. Then the TX module will boost up the power to a specific value, keep that power till you get clear of the obstacle, or maybe get over the building, and then it's going to resume back to the set setting that you have put. So it's more of a oh dear moment rather than something that you should absolutely rely on.
But
As for
I was going to say, but we know all the pilots are just going to use that to try and fly as far as away as they possibly can, if it's
yeah,
legal and safe to do so. But
for that, we suggest setting the manual power target.
And the other part of that is fan control. Is that also with, so when the module gets warm, the fan comes on automatically?
Yes, initially we had the fan control hardware set at to turn on at 250 milliwatts, but some pilots have complained that their modules are getting uncomfortably warm even at lower powers such as 150, 250 milliwatts. So we decided to add it in now as a setting where you can set at which power you want the fan on. So if you set it to the minimum power output, then it's going to be constantly on. If you set it to the maximum one, it's going to be off outside of that one.
Fantastic. Do you want to talk about the next one then, about the wide switch mode via Lua?
The wide switch mode is probably one of the most requested features from the fixed wing pilots and people that are doing cruise missions. As you may have known, we had two types of switches in Express LRS. First one being the very first one, which is your typical binary control. So either the switch is on or off, mostly used by racers. Allows for very high and very small packet rates, but the downside being you don't have a lot of control with more switches. Now we have three of them. The standard dynamic one, which was part of Express LRS ever since 1.0, which allows you to have 8-bit switches, which should suffice for most pilots. But for those trying to run head tracker modules or pan and tilt systems, then you probably need a lot more resolution. And this is where we added the wide switch mode option, which, by the way, can be configured via Lua. So these modes are no longer decided when you flash the firmware, but set from Lua. And the wide switch mode now allows you to have channels that are 64 or 128 positions.
So that means that the issue that we've had up to now, where only the first 4 channels really could be used for main controls, and then you had channel 5 as your arming channel, which was kind of a binary 2-position channel, and then you had everything else. We can now actually have other channels to set things like flaps or head trackers or whatever, and decide whether or not it's, because you say 64 or 128 bits, so rather than being 64-bit, you mean 64 individual positions within the range.
Yes, that's basically right. The gist of it.
Fantastic. Lots of people are going to be very happy about that. Me in particular.
Yes, but it has a small caveat. For it to function, you have to have full telemetry enabled in your systems, which shouldn't be a problem starting from 2.0, where we enabled the telemetry by default on all targets.
Next one, model match. We get model match in ELRS.
Yes, that was another one widely requested features, especially for the drone pilots out there who have a very big fleet of drones. Now you can set your model IDs within your profiles on your radio, and Express LRS will honor that and set individual settings for each of the profiles. So, for example, on Model 0, it's your typical drones with 500 hertz, 10 milliwatts, no telemetry. And then on Model 1, you have, for example, your long-range drones with maybe 250 or 100 hertz with higher output power and more telemetry, and all these kind of neat stuff.
So the model match is it using the model ID from the OpenTX model itself?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So it just basically works like all the other systems that we've used then?
Yes, essentially like the other systems.
Next one, BLE joysticks. We get those in version 2.0 too.
For the sim pilots out there, myself included, now you have the ability to not rely on, let's say, a receiver dongle or any sort of external device to connect to your computer to play a simulator or be tethered via the USB cable. Now you can go into your Lua, set your module to the BLE Joystick mode, and then it's going to turn off the RF module completely so that you don't disturb your neighbor's Wi-Fi or anything of the sorts. And then you can play a simulator. I would say, as a friendly PSA, we still haven't tested how's the latency compared to having it plugged in directly or using other solutions. So some people out there have the necessary gear to test it out, then they're more than welcome to chat with us and give us the results.
Next one, video transmitter administration.
That's one of the small side projects that has matured enough to be now part of the main feature set, which is Jai's main work, which basically allows you to control your VTX via the Lua script instead of how on other systems you have to plug it in to the receiver directly and then you lose control via the flight controller. On Express LRS, we use the MSP commands that Betaflight or iNav or other flight controller systems understand, and we just send those MSP commands to the flight controller to change the channel output power or other parameters, regardless of whatever it's using, smart audio or a telemetry tram.
Interesting. That will be fun to have a play with. I've got some more modules. We'll talk about the hardware in a minute, but I've got some more modules coming in, and I might flash some of them with the latest beta stuff and have a play with some of this. Next one then. This, I don't understand exactly what this is. I'm fascinated by this. Backpack project for VRX control. What's that?
Some of the users of Crossfire and Ghost have mentioned to us that there's this neat little feature called My VTX, and then I don't remember exactly the name of the feature on Ghost, but it essentially allows you to synchronize your receiver on the in your goggles as well as your VTX, so that whenever you change channels or bands, you're still in sync and they change on both sides at the same time.
Okay, yeah. So in Crossfire, this is the TBS Cloud stuff.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And in our case, we're using our typical ESP modules, but they're connected to the SPI lines on a receiver module. For example, a rapid fire or a DIY version with a RX 5808 or others modules that are coming in the future, because it's still a work in progress. What you do is basically solder up this backpack to your video receiver via the pinout given in the documentation. And then you just go into your Lua script, set your band, your channel, and your output power, as well as bit mode if you want to configure that for your VTX. And then it's going to send that same command to both the backpack and the receiver on the drone. And then it's going to change the channels on both of them simultaneously. So you don't have to fuss around at races or other events, changing channels on both of them, making sure that they're in sync, making sure that they're at the same power level, etc.
That could be an interesting feature, because I'm a fan of the TBS Cloud stuff. It works very nicely. And I guess this next bit is maybe related, because you guys are introducing home Wi-Fi connections to it as well. Is that part of the infrastructure that's going to allow you to do these changes to both ends at once?
This is more for more of a quality of life feature, which is the fact that there's a lot of people that, again, as I mentioned, have a lot of models that they have receivers in. And whenever we come out with a new version, and especially with the recent pace that we've been keeping up with, there's quite a lot of hardware to update and reflash. And due to that whole hassle of enabling Wi-Fi, connecting to the device's Wi-Fi access point, flashing it, switching to the other one, etc., now we allow you to flash your home Wi-Fi network name as well as the password. And then once the receivers or the transmitters or the backpacks, all our ELRS hardware is powered up and it enters Wi-Fi mode, it's going to automatically search for this access point and connect to it. And then on the local network, it's going to broadcast that, hey, I'm ELRS hardware. Make sure that you're aware that I'm here. And then in the
Wow, okay.
configurator, you're going to be able to see the list of currently connected ELRS hardware devices. There, you can select which device you want to flash, and it's automatically going to pick the target, as well as the settings that are available for it or you have previously set. So it's going to be a quick 2-button flash for all the devices.
Okay, next one. Now, this one is quite a big one. I know it's one that's dear to your heart. This is the first cut of the OLED support for modules, isn't it?
Yes, this is the very first time since 1.1, I think, ever since we started actually maintaining the OLED branch for the ELRS project. Finally, its preliminary support is being added into the mainline code. And now all the users of modules with OLED displays, be it the DIY ones or the Ghost module or the upcoming new products that have OLED modules, you're going to be able now to see some of the parameters that the module is using on the back of the display.
But we'll come back to OLED because I've got quite a few OLED things in and they're not using this code that we've just talked about. So very quickly, let's do the last three things for version 2.0. EdgeTX gets something a little special, doesn't it?
Yes, so for EdgeTX users, now we have the ability to run at Megabaud speeds. So for those not aware of it, you can now go within EdgeTX on supported radios. You can now go for communication speeds of higher than 400,000 baud. So these will allow you to refresh the LUA faster, as well as have quicker packets sent between the radio and the module.
Last couple then. So there's a new telemetry sensor and some new CRSF LUA things as well, isn't there? Also something to do with Yappu script. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I love the Yappu script. I'm a fan of it. I really like it.
Yes, so huge thanks to Yappu and all of his contribution to the ELRS project as well. He helped us out with understanding and modifying the telemetry script so that it works flawlessly with ArduPilot devices. Now, using the latest release of ELRS, you can use full telemetry with ArduPilot models, and there's no worry about a lack of
weird sensors missing
features.
And yeah,
yes,
because you get an awful lot back down from the ArduPilot system. That's really exciting. Yeah, shout out to Yappu because it's a fantastic script.
For the users of your typical Crossfire Lua script, now you're going to be able to set some of the features and some of the functions from within Agent Lite, because now all of our modules do give out the specific CRSF packet that gives the script the full capabilities and settings of the modules. So you're not necessarily reliant on our own Lua script, but we would prefer that you would use it to have full benefits of the functionality. Yes, now the Lua script is a lot more informative. So it's going to now show you which TX device you have within your JR bay, which one you're interfacing with currently, as well as have a more user-friendly menu for changing out different settings, as well as going into different menus.
Fantastic. That will be good. I think there's lots more potentially in there that can happen. A couple of things that you were going to happy to talk about 2.1. And again, this is future stuff, so caveat. Things are subject to change. But I know that you're working on a lot of the OLED stuff. It sounds like the menu support is going to be enhanced a lot, potentially, for 2.1. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so currently, as I mentioned, we only have a preliminary support where it just shows you some statistics from the module on the display. But in 2.1, we're aiming to have full OLED menu support. So it's going to allow you to bind, to change all kinds of settings, interface with other ELRS devices, and many more features with the included joystick.
Yes, the joystick will work properly. We'll come back to that in a minute. For those of you that saw my review of the Beta FPV, the latest module, the 5-position joystick doesn't work as a 5-position joystick, which confused the heck out of me. And last one then is something I'm really interested in. You've also got the option to push out the telemetry from the module to an external Android app so that you can view it. That's something that's coming in 2.1 as well, hopefully, isn't it?
Aiming for 2.1 to have full telemetry mirroring via the backpack, but due to some constraints of the backpack in terms of hardware, we're only able to push out this telemetry via a Wi-Fi network. In the meantime, we're looking at the telemetry viewer app and see if maybe we can have the guys there give us a hand, or maybe some of our own devs, if they have spare time, to add in support to fetch telemetry via the network instead of using Bluetooth or other means.
You see, that I would be really interested in that, because if I could fly an Ardu pilot model with ELRS and get the telemetry back down and then be able to expose that to a laptop running mission planner, that would be my ideal situation. So if there's anything that we can do towards that, I'm really excited, because at the moment, the only other system that I'm aware of that does it is the Crossfire one, and the Mavlink at the moment, with the way it works, the Mavlink data is one of the first things to be dropped. The telemetry is dropped when things get sticky with the radio connection.
For ELRS, we're currently not looking at implementing Mavlink, purely because it has very big packets that do not fit within your standard ELRS packets. Maybe in the future, if other volunteers have time, maybe we're going to start a separate project for Mavlink radios.
Let's talk about two things to kind of wrap up here. This next one, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the hardware and software, because obviously you guys are the developers developing the code for Express LRS, and then that code is available to everybody, but you're also working with people like Namino, people like Beta FPV, who are making modules and taking that code and then sticking on there. It seems at the moment that a lot of those vendors seem to be taking the code that's been tested from you guys, and then in an effort to differentiate their product to the customer, doing some stuff to it. So for example, the Beta FPV module with the OLED stuff in the back, and I'm talking to you historically, that's OLED implementation that they're using on that module is their own. It's not the one from the project itself. And similarly, other vendors are all kind of playing with the code, and it doesn't at the moment feel like a lot of those changes or things that are happening where they're trying to differentiate and make themselves slightly different is kind of coming back into the project. Can you talk a little bit about how it should work?
Generally, we have our manufacturers either come into contact with us, or if someone out there can reach out to them, and then they can come back to us. Then once we establish communications, we have them explain to us what kind of product that they want to release. We give them our feedback, and then once everyone is satisfied and there's no hidden gotchas or bugs that may have be on the modules in the initial testing phase, then the manufacturers can go ahead and release the product.
Right, so that's how it should work. But I'm guessing that at the moment, the manufacturers are all kind of very keen to get their products out quickly, which is why we've had some of the issues with things like capacitors being missed, which has meant that flashing has been a challenge. And some people have talked about, Wi-Fi updates working when they don't. And it has been a little bit scrappy, I think, with the hardware vendors. But from what I can see, that it does seem to be calming down a little bit. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the integration between the hardware guys and you guys at the project will become a little bit more seamless, and it won't feel like they take your code and then run off with it and do whatever they want. Because the issue that I have as a pilot is that I would hate to be in a situation where I buy their radio and then from there on in I have to use their modified version of the ELRS project in order to update the radio. I'd rather prefer to just update, like as you described, have it all connected on the Wi-Fi and just update it from the one configurator as I find features that I want to use.
We're not there for the manufacturer or for a certain gain. We're first and foremost there for the users and to make sure that everyone is going to have a seamless integration of the rest of the products that ELRS that run ELRS. as well as have no surprise gotchas when they buy a module from a certain vendor and then surprise, surprise, it doesn't work the way it should be. If users find issues, then they're more than welcome to hop on our Discord, give us a heads up. Hey, maybe this isn't how it's supposed to work. Maybe it's just a software bug that we may have introduced, or maybe it's a hardware issue that has to be dug in deeper. But at the end of the day, we're always there for the pilots and for the users of Express LRS.
I can absolutely, as a user of the and a tester of it playing here, I can absolutely attest to that. You guys have been great, and also the issues that you and I spent that 2 hours trying to troubleshoot that evening back in the early days was actually fixed later on by some firmware things that you did in 1.1. So sometimes you guys will work to implement a change within the code that actually overcomes a challenge that customers are having with the hardware side to kind of make the system work together again. The last thing I want to talk about then is certification, something that I get asked about a lot. There's a lot of work that has to go into certifying something like ELRS. So if you look at people like, let's talk about things like Ghost, Crossfire, Free Sky, all those people have to go through a process where they have to meet certain standards, and they have to certificates of conformity and REDs and all kinds of stuff. By having those, it means that resellers can resell them, because in lots of places in the world, not having that conformity means that the reseller isn't able to sell it because it doesn't comply with the local laws in place for radio transmission.
Yes, we keep this in the back of our minds, and every time it comes up, we always are discussing it, trying to find ways on how we can make it possible. The whole thing with regulations is that it's a very difficult thing to fully understand, especially for engineers, where the legalese isn't our forte. We are looking into figuring these things out. Maybe some manufacturers are willing to help us out.
Yeah, so I think as part of this video, I will put a shout out to those hardware guys who are selling products based on the ELRS project and making the money from the code, to kind of roll your sleeves up and get involved and give a hand with all the legal stuff that has to happen in order to cross the T's, dot the I's, so that compliance can happen.
Yes, so the whole process, we've started it way back in the day, since before 1.0, back when someone opened a issue on GitHub, and it's been discussed multiple times from multiple people, with different documents being brought up, with different certifications being brought up, but we still haven't figured out a solid plan on how we can make this thing to work on both the software and the hardware side. So all kinds of feedback for this issue are always welcome from people that are knowledgeable about such certifications.
So for those of you that are watching now, you know an awful lot more about what's coming in Express LRS version 2.0. A couple of little hints about what's coming in 2.1. You now also, we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges with the hardware manufacturers and the project, and how that it does genuinely seem to be getting a little bit better. They're not quite as cowboy as they were in the first iteration. I'll say that so you don't have to. And then finally, we talked a little bit about the certification and the fact that it is something you guys are aware of and working on. And if there's anyone out there that knows how to go through that process or can assist, the project are all ears. Thank you again for the time this evening. I really do appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Lee, for the interview, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.